grew up watching the 1943 version, directed by Bob Stevens with Orson Welles and Joan Fontaine. And it's definitely one of the films I remember as a kid, you know, the black and white films I remember really well and liking it a lot. And while I was waiting for Sin Nombre to go into production, I was thinking about stories I could write. And I was thinking about stuff, you know, that was in the public domain, like old books. And Jane Eyre definitely popped up in my mind as a potential adaptation. And then it kind of went away once I started making Sin Nombre. But when I was traveling through Europe for promotion with that film, I ended up in the UK and I met with BBC and I found out they had it on their slate. So I read the script and I liked it. And then I had a meeting with the producer and writer and told them I liked it. And they said they liked me. And so let's make a movie.
I read the book in the middle of 2009, before I knew the project was happening. And I was halfway through it, and I emailed my agent, and I was like, is anybody developing the project? Is there a script around? And there wasn't at the time, but literally a month or two later, she sent me the script, and I met with Cary. So it was really good timing.
I think one of the ways the story maybe feels contemporary, I think there's two ways. One, in thinking of the style. If you think of the Orson Welles and Joan Fontaine version, it's very theatrical. The acting's very arch. And even the cinematography, it's very sort of like noirish. And in this one, just by nature of how he wanted to tackle the subject, and also by casting actors like Michael Fassbender and Mia, who are extremely naturalistic actors and have very sort of truthful styles of performing, it feels grounded. It feels more immediate. And then also just the structure by breaking up the chronology of the story and starting at a sort of more mysterious moment. It allows you to, in a more modern way, get into the story because it's we just kind of give you little bits of information, so it keeps the audience a little more engaged, hopefully.
My preparation for the film was I read the book again and went through underlining anything that I thought was important, or and then I realized I'd pretty much underlined the whole book, so I don't know what that served. And then I also just tried to, I like to collect images, and me and Cary looked at a lot of images as well, of anything that just reminded us of an essence of her character, or something that she would be experiencing, or the way that they, even physically, the way that they hold themselves. And then the big challenge was making the language feel natural, I think, and which is what we tried to do in rehearsals, read through the scenes enough times, because it's a language that we don't use anymore. It's really ornate and very poetic, and so we wanted to make that feel comfortable with us.
Can you just talk a tiny bit about your relationship with the costuming? Because I know on a movie like this, really the costumer's like the second or third person you talk to, and you spent a lot of time with them, I assume. So can you talk a little bit about that?
That costume made me very upset.
Yeah, she started getting tics when she saw it.
You really get a sense of the repression that women were under in that time when you step into a corset. It not only restricts you here, but you can't really bend down, and then you can't really reach up very high because there's something over your shoulder, and yeah, it's incredibly painful. It's really a great way to be able to embody the character and understand what it would be like, but it's a pain.
I can only imagine when it was wet.
It's like 10 times heavier.
Yeah, the opening sequence he did of her in the rain, we did on the second day of shooting, which was like the beginning of March, and like still freezing in northern England. I mean, I think there were still places where there was snow. And so they said they were going to give her a wetsuit underneath that costume, which turned into like, it wasn't a wetsuit, it was basically like a full body condom.
Yes, it was.
Which doesn't provide much warmth. It just makes you sweaty, like in a moist and uncomfortable kind of way.
It was not pretty.
And then it was freezing cold, and you had to do that falling scene.
It was insane, and it was day 2, and then I go home with hypothermia. And
I believe this film should be made every 5 years. So this was my turn. Also, as a sophomore film, if people didn't like the writing, I didn't want to get the blame for it. So you can write to Charlotte Bronte, tell her what you thought. Like I said, it was a movie I loved as a kid, and even before I made Sin Nombre, I thought of maybe doing that as a film. Never thought of modernizing it in terms of putting it in nowadays, always as a period film. I studied history, so I like the 19th century. And after spending 5 years, in Central America, Mexico, like riding trains and hanging out in prisons, the idea of hanging out in the northern countryside and a barber jacket and hunter boots seemed appealing. Maybe ride some horses. They didn't let me ride horses, some kind of insurance
Should've
thing.
checked that.
But yeah, so that's why.
Well, you both are very fun, and I really thank you for being here.
Thank you for having
Thanks
us.
so much to these guys. And go tell your friends to see Jane Eyre.